This is Franchise Today, brought to you by FRM Solutions, providers of the best-in-class software solutions for franchise relationship management. Franchise Today is your destination for weekly information, conversations, and interviews with accomplished industry leaders, all of whom share best practices for sustainable growth and sensible franchising. Here now, your host, Stan Friedman, to kick off this week's podcast.
Today is Wednesday, March 26th. 2025. I'm Stan Friedman, and this is Franchise Today. Well, what an interesting week this has been. While prepping for today's episode, I discovered something of a post-production problem. The recording of my interview with today's guest, Daryl Dollinger, came out of post-production with him sounding terrific. My end of the conversation, though, didn't rise to the same level of acoustical supremacy. Did I just say acoustical supremacy? Does such a term even exist? Well, it does now. Here's the bottom line. There was what appears to be the high likelihood that my voice was recorded off mic, by my laptop computer's mic, in fact, not the Yeti mic that was plugged into the computer. I won't even begin to try and explain what that means to the finished product, as you'll get to hear that for yourself momentarily. I will tell you, though, that some of the most talented post-producers on the earth moved heaven and earth for me to get this episode cleaned up to the place where my hope is that this pre-presentation apology successfully begs your forgiveness. The truth is that Daryl's content is so rich and informative, and he did most of the talking anyway, so it should be a little easier for you to push through it. When we return from a break, I'll tell you more about who Daryl is and why I think you'll agree this is one interview you don't want to miss. So don't go away. I'll be right back.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by Profit Keeper, the #1 franchise analytics platform for franchisors and franchisees. Trusted by more than 150 brands and 50,000 franchisees, Profit Keeper connects KPI, benchmark, and royalty data from your locations, groups, and territories. With Profit Keeper, you see stats in real time, presented simply and graphically. This makes it easy to identify actionable information for franchisees to help them drive profitability and brand growth at the unit level. No more wrangling data and guessing what works and what doesn't. To learn more and to get started, visit profitkeeper.com/franchise today. Daryl Dollinger was the president and co-founder of Raving Brands, today better known as Big Game Brands. With many years of franchise sales, real estate development, concept creation, franchise marketing, operations, and training experience, specifically in the fast casual space, with high energy concepts, Daryl is no stranger to the worlds of franchising and restaurants. Having co-founded and created, operated, and managed many franchise concepts, including Moe's Southwest Grill, Planet Smoothie, Mama Foo's Asian House, Doc Green's Gourmet Grill, Bonehead Seafood, the Flying Biscuit Cafe, and Monkey Joe's, Daryl Dollinger has earned his stripes in this space. Today, his primary focus is the further development of his Flying Biscuit Cafe Concept, where they serve trendy Southern-style breakfasts, brunches, lunches, and a full array of creative adult beverages on-site at their 30-plus restaurants and off-site at catering events throughout their franchise territories. And he's here today to dish on it all. Daryl Dollinger, welcome to Franchise Today.
Good to be here, Stan.
Great having you, Daryl. I find myself sometimes having to apologize to people like you who are in my backyard, who I should be talking to years ago on Franchise Today, and we've just now gotten around to doing it. But
Literally so in your backyard, yes.
So it goes.
Yes.
So happy to have you here. We've got so much history, common denominators, common people between us. So this is going to be a fun conversation, but we're going to start it the way we always do, Daryl. I'm going to ask you to rewind the tape and take us back to the days before franchising. What course were you on? What course were you navigating before franchising hit you upside your head? What did that look like and when was it?
Wow. Well, that's a good question. Happy to be on with you. It started for me at a young age. I grew up in New York, Long Island, New York, and worked many things from valet parking, waiting tables, And the summer of my junior year of high school, I ended up working for a catering company. And that kind of popped my cherry, so to speak. I got exposed to things in New York City and all over Long Island that I never thought I would in the food service business, in the wholesale food service business, because he did a lot of manufacturing of products. But anyway, I really kind of cracked the ice right there. And I really enjoyed the hustle and bustle of being in the food service business. And that was the summer of my junior year, the summer of my senior year. In high school, I did it again. And then when I came back from college in the summers, did that as well. I probably worked for him 4 or 5 summers. And when I first started, I was 16 and I was kind of doing rinky-dink stuff. And by the time I was 20, I was driving deliveries and doing stuff in $1 million homes in New York City and brownstones for this caterer. And it was really broke me into the food service business. And I went to college in South Carolina, University of South Carolina. And my first job out of college was with Aramark. They used to call ARA Services in Charleston, South Carolina. That was really my first kind of real job, making, $29,000 a year back in 1991, a few years ago, and getting used and abused as a cafeteria and snack bar manager. But I didn't know, wanted to be in the food service business and working for them. I remember talking to my dad about it, and he's like, you know what? They're a big company. You're on a college campus. You're not too far from friends and at the time girlfriend in Columbia. And so we did it. And it was a great experience. I ended up staying with them for 5 years, got moved all around the Southeast in the campus dining division from the College of Charleston to Abraham Baldwin Agricultural College in South Georgia, and then ended up my last couple of years in 96 in Rome, Georgia, overseeing food service for multiple counts up there in the northwest part of Georgia. And then I had an opportunity to do some stuff with the Olympics in 96 in Atlanta, which obviously was a big turning point for the city of Atlanta in a lot of ways. And had a friend of mine who was a big investment banker. And he had a friend whose cousin or manager or somebody that he knew in the business was opening up this restaurant in Buckhead called Country Star American Music Grill. It was in Buckhead, right on Peachtree Road. Now it's a Restoration Hardware. It used to be the ESPN zone. But this is 1996. And I left Aramark after working, with the Olympics, which was not fun. But it was a great experience. It wasn't fun from the work standpoint. And then started working for them, right, literally at the end of the Olympics in August. And it was the Planet Hollywood of country music. You had amazing, like Reba McEntire and Vince Gill and all these country music people as the investors. And these guys had one in LA, they had one in Vegas, and they were doing one in Orlando. Problem is, this should have been up in Kennesaw. It shouldn't have been, or in Carrollton. It shouldn't have been in Buckhead, but these are LA people. And then just bounced around and worked for a couple different companies, Einstein's Bagels. And then as I started working for Einstein's over in the Smyrna area, Paris Ferry, Windy Hill, before Truist Park was there was really not much there other than Dobbins. Ended up working for Einstein's, and right next to me in that shopping center was a Planet Smoothie. And that's this was 98, late 97, and then met the owners of Planet Smoothie. They used to come in all the time because that was their corporate store. Their offices were right there on River Edge Parkway. And we just got to talking. And one thing led to another. I borrowed $50,000 from my dad, and I opened up a Planet Smoothie franchise right across the street from King and Queen building in Sandy Springs on Hammond Drive. And it was the best thing I could have ever done because I was my own boss. Thankfully, my dad helped me out a little bit, which I was terrified of at the time because I'd never had done anything like that before. But I knew how to hustle. I knew how to work. I knew how to manage, and ended up being one of the number one stores in the chain at the time. Had 150 units at the time. And then fast forward a few years, did that for a few years, had bought a bunch of people out in Atlanta and had 6 stores in Atlanta. And then my business partner at the time, Martin Sprock, we had some Planet Smoothies that were right next to a little burrito concept called Willie's. And anyone who's in Atlanta knows what Willie's is. The one on Hammond Drive is right next to Willie's, is still there. The one in Vinings was right next to Cumberland Parkway by Chick-fil-A, by Home Depot. Willie's was there, and we're just looking at him, and I are just talking to each other like, what are we doing? Trying to figure out how to make more money, how to do more sales. And there's a line out the door at Willie's. We're eating there every day. We're like, this is great. We're selling smoothies and a wrap sandwich for $7. And he's selling a burrito, chips, salsa, and a drink for $10. Like, what are we doing? So we started talking to him. Whatever arrangements we tried to make with him didn't work out. I'm like, you know what? We could do this ourselves. And hence the birth of Moe's Southwest Grill was in the summer of 1999. I sold all my Planet Smoothies, jumped knee deep into the Moe's business, brought on some different consultants, and then myself, Seth Salzman, which I'm sure you know who Seth is. Yeah, well, it was me, Seth, and Martin at the beginning. It was really Seth and I. We were driving back and forth to Athens and training with another guy who had a restaurant. And by December of 2000, a year later, we opened up the first original Moe's Southwest Grill location in Buckhead. There's a lot more details I'm leaving out. I know I don't have a lot of time, but it was quite a ride.
I remember that store. The Raving Brand's office was in the back end of that store.
In the back. Yeah, it was crazy. I mean, we did everything kind of very, very frugally, and we opened up. We had good food. It was Seth and I on the line and a bunch of employees at the beginning. And we every mistake you could make in the operations of a business, we made, but we cut our teeth on it. And luckily, Martin was there to support us financially to help us get through those tough times. But probably by the middle of 2001, real estate guys started coming to us. And at the time, ironically, Einstein's Bagels had a bunch of locations in Atlanta that I helped open years before, and a lot of them were closing. So we had 4 leases signed and 1 open, and still didn't know what we were doing. But Martin was very aggressive with the whole real estate thing. Real estate is what you need, and he was right, especially in 2000, 2001. We were ahead of the curve, and all 4 of those locations I just mentioned became stores 2, 3, 4, and 5. And then we just started selling franchises. It was unbelievable. He knew how to sell from the Planet Smoothie days, Martin that is, and taught me how to do it. We used to sit there and no meetings Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, meetings Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Why? Because we were packed Thursday through Sunday. Sunday was the only day we didn't have franchise meetings, and we would sit right there on the front, in front of the line, in front of the menu, and we'd bring out food for people to try, and people would just lose their minds because there would be a line out the door, and we were busy, and we were doing, for one store, we were doing 30 grand a week. And in 2001, that was a lot. Couldn't tell you about a P&L, couldn't tell you about item 19 because we were just kind of doing everything we could get people in the door. And then literally people started just coming out of the woodwork. There was no lead generation. There was no Zoom calls. I still have the notepads from 25 years ago. It's every once in a while I'll go through the garage or the basement and look through them. And it's just amazing to see the way I used to get 10, 12 phone calls a day and probably respond to 25 a day. And then there would be times I'd have 3, 4 meetings a day. And then eventually I had to have meetings every day. It couldn't just be Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we would have 5, 6 meetings a day. And of those 5, 6 meetings, at least one person would sign every single day.
How many years from the first store to your exit?
So the exit was 2007. So we started in December of 2001. So 6+ years is what it took. And in 2001, we probably opened up 7, 8 locations. 2002, we probably opened up 30 locations. Then 2003, we probably opened up about 80 locations. That's when we hired everybody. We hired Marty, Matt Andrew, Sonny Crumpton. We hired everybody. There was like 6 or 7 of us by 2004, and 2005, 6, and 7, we opened almost 100 locations each one of those years. I mean, it was insane. We had teams of training. We had 3 different opening teams. But at the beginning, I did it all by myself because Seth stayed home and trained everybody in the Buckhead store. And then I would go out by myself, which these days that never happens. I went out by myself and just trained everybody in, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Orlando, Charleston, Columbia. Those were like the first stores that opened. The best thing we did is we did little circles around Atlanta. Of course, all throughout Atlanta. I mean, we had 60 restaurants in Atlanta by 2007. It was insane. And it's all a big blur. I mean, thankfully, my wife was very understanding and our kids were babies. I mean, my oldest was born in 2003 and then 2005 and 2007. So they were all babies. By the time I was out of it, my son was born in 2007, June. So he was just an infant when we sold the fall of 2007.
So fast forward the tape for us from there. What would be the next milestone for you?
Oh, gosh. I mean, really, the acquisition in 2000, it was completed in 2008. That was a big deal. I mean, that was a big deal for Martin, of course, especially, and for myself as the second largest shareholder and a few others. It was a big deal financially. But at the time, Raving Brands, we had 9 concepts. Moe's, of course, was our number 1 concept, but we had some that we had acquired, like Shane's Rib Shack, Flying Biscuit, Monkey Joe's, which was a kids' entertainment. And then we created Mama Foo's, Asian, Doc Green's, Soups and Salad, Boneheads, Seafood, and PJ's Coffee we acquired as well. So we had 9 brands. And of course, Planet Smoothie we still had as well. So we had 9 brands. So really after the acquisition and we had 100 employees at Moe's. So I would say 75 of the 100 employees went to Focus. So it was a little weird because we didn't have what we had with Moe's. We definitely had some interest in a lot of the other brands, and Shane's got to 75 units, and Planet Smoothie was already over 100 units, and some of the others got to 20, 30 locations, but nothing was the cat's meow like Moe's. So after that, it's kind of a blur. I mean, we ended up selling off some of the other brands because they just were not as successful. The economy wasn't great. I'm sure you recall back in 2008, 2009, it was a little rough. We couldn't, nobody can get lending, and it's kind of similar to the way it is today. Everything goes in cycles, but it was a little rough. So we ended up selling some of the brands to some of our larger franchisees. We ended up selling off Shane's and Planet Smoothie to same group. We ended up selling PJs to the Ballard brothers. I mean, we got rid of everything except for Flying Biscuit and Monkey Joe's. And that brings us fast forward to today, where we still have those concepts. And we dabble in some other brands as well, some full service stuff that we're not franchising, but we'd love to franchise these other brands that are full service concepts. But certainly from that period, probably 2010 to today, over the last 15 years, our main focus has been on Flying Biscuit and Monkey Joe's for sure, and now more so Flying Biscuit than anything else.
A quick time out here for a break, and we'll be right back.
Franchise Today will be right back, but first, a word from our sponsors.
Franchise Today is brought to you by FRM Solutions, offering the only CRM tool built exclusively for franchising that lets you have it your way. Whether you're a single brand needing professional tools across departments or a portfolio of brands needing franchise-specific CRM across the enterprise. Either way, FRM satisfies the needs of many with the power of one. That's right, one single instance of FRM is all it takes across departments or across brands. So if you've had it with inflexible, one-size-fits-all CRM, end your frustration today. FRM offers robust dashboarding, tailored reporting, and with open APIs, FRM pushes, pulls, and integrates with other databases, providing you with a single source of truth. Don't just take my word for it. Visit them at frmsolutions.com and order up a demo today. And we continue the conversation today with Daryl Dollinger. Daryl, you're just like a walking encyclopedia of food service and history here in Atlanta. So many memories. Well, why don't we talk and hone in on your big passion project these days seems to be Flying Biscuit. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Flying Biscuit through COVID and any of the massive changes that you might have seen coming out of COVID that you've implemented beyond? I've talked to a lot of people who made a lot of changes because everybody, the word of the year for COVID was pivot. And then for the next year after pivot, everything became frictionless. And here we are a couple of years beyond that. And some of those changes have stuck, others maybe not. But how does the world square up? How do you see the post-COVID world with Flying Biscuit compared to the days prior?
Well, I guess the days prior, obviously very different. We didn't have as much delivery. We didn't have as much catering. We didn't have as much outside sales as we do today. And when you mentioned pivoting, yes, that's how we pivoted. Right at the beginning of COVID, March of 2020, we never closed down any of our dining rooms. And mind you, most of our locations are in the Southeast, so weather was a little bit better as opposed to New York, New Jersey, Northeast. Right. So we never closed. We certainly pivoted and didn't allow people in the dining room. We just did pickup only. We immersed ourselves into the online stores and the third-party delivery, and through that, the catering business grew significantly because once people got back to work, we had some catering business. We always did. But once people got back to work, the days of Friday, hey, let's take everyone in the office out to lunch or brunch or whatever, just were gone. So we pivoted again and really explored growing our catering business, and we did significantly. And at the time when we had COVID, probably right at the beginning, maybe there was 15, 18 restaurants, and then really didn't do much of 2020. And then 2021, we probably opened 5 or 6, 2022, another 5 or 6. And now we're at 36 restaurants. We're probably going to open up 10 more this year. So we should be 46 to 50 by the end of this year. So we're growing exponentially, but the growth was really the biggest thing that hurt us, is that people couldn't get loans. It was hard to get out and look at real estate with people. So we just kind of put our customer hats on and what do the guests want? And the guests wanted convenience. They wanted the ability to sit outside when possible. So all of our locations, with very few exceptions, from that point forward, had outside patios and still have outside patios. We dressed those up as best as we could. We made sure that anyone who didn't have an outside patio, we just created one. We just put all of our dining room seats outside in any place that could potentially be covered to deal with the elements. The summers here, as you know, are pretty rough. So it was a challenge getting product. It was a challenge getting marketing out over social media because social media was so bogged down. But we lived through it. We did well, and really proud of our franchisees who jumped in. And again, being in Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Alabama was pretty easy or easier, not easy, than being in other places. So we were thankful for what we had in that regard. And then post-COVID, as things started to loosen up in 2022 and obviously 2023 and 2024 completely loosened up. And the biggest challenges right now with bringing in new franchisees is lending. The banks and the SBA are very stringent. Their restrictions seem to change all the time. But I've been doing this for a long time, and I know you have too. And the difficulty with credit-worthy people getting a loan these days is almost shocking. Whereas it was much easier for not such great average credit-worthy people getting a loan in the past, but now it's unbelievable what the hoops they have to jump through with SBA and others. So those are the things that, from a branding standpoint, we focus on because we can help people. We have a lot of financial connections. And I think people just tend to come to us from a quality of a franchise because it's a 7 to 2 workday, 7 to 3 workday. You gotta be up early in the morning, but you're at home by 4:00. And there's not too many of the brands in the food service industry that you could say that. So
why don't you spend a minute or two just rolling out the brand's value prop to the audience that doesn't necessarily know Flying Biscuit?
Yeah, Flying Biscuit's been around for a long time. The brand was started in Atlanta in 1993. We acquired it 10 years later in 2003, 2004. We have about 36 locations and probably be close to 50 by the end of this year. Most of our locations are about 3,000 to 4,000 square feet. We love to have very visible location with an end cap and a patio. And I think the reason why people want to get into business with us, because breakfast is hot and popular right now. We do breakfast Southern style with a little bit of a twist, a lot of fun. It's a great environment. And I think what people love about us, as I mentioned earlier, is that as long as you don't mind getting up early, you could be home by 4:00. You could work a good 60, 70-hour work week, which in the restaurant business is pretty average. And as long as you don't mind getting up at 5:00 in the morning and dealing with first thing in the morning things, but it's a 10-hour day, 6 days a week. Got to have a day off. That's where the value comes in. Most of the franchisees that we bring into the system today, they love the fact that we can do the volume that we can do in 2 day parts, breakfast and lunch. So that's where I think really the value proposition is.
Are you dealing with owner operators?
We have a good mix, luckily. I think what happens with us is at the beginning, you get people who are engaged and on site, and then they end up understanding the do's and don'ts of the business from us and just from doing it every day. And then they're doing enough volume that they can hire a manager and teach that person to take over. And then they don't have to be on site as much. And then they focus on marketing and catering. As I mentioned before, we have some owners that they focus on catering and 25% of their sales are catering. It's unbelievable.
And you're pretty focused on Southern menus like grits are the main event, aren't they?
Yeah, definitely, we do our shrimp and grits. We do some collard greens. But we do the traditional pancakes, waffles, eggs, everything else. But we do a bunch of lunch stuff as well. We're actually getting ready to roll out a great new lunch menu, which will come out this spring. I don't want to tease it too much because it's not finished yet, but it'll be lunch through and through. We've always been known as a brand as breakfast all day, any day. Back early on, we were open for dinner too. There are a couple of units that still stay open for dinner and they do great with it. It's not for everybody. Those are the original locations here in Atlanta and then a couple in North Carolina. But other than that, everyone's just open breakfast and lunch, and that Southern cuisine with a twist and really a lot of fun. Our environment is pretty cool inside of our restaurant.
What do you see ahead for franchising as well as for Flying Biscuit the next 3 to 5 years? I know a lot of people in fourth quarter were parked out just waiting to see what was going to happen with the election before they threw money back into investing in small business. Whether we agree with the politics of the election or not, to me, is irrelevant. Do you think that the landscape, though, is better for business investment now? And do you see yourself with any kind of a lift that you think might even help the SBA loosen up a little bit and change some of the restrictions?
Well, I certainly hope there's a lift. It's been pretty rocky the last, I'd say, 6 to 12 months. And I suspect it's going to be rocky for the next 6 to 12 months. As you said, regardless of what you believe politically, nothing's going to change, or I shouldn't say nothing. Some things that are changing in my world from a financing standpoint, they don't move very quickly. In fact, they move very slowly. So any changes that would be coming, which I hope to be coming in the next 6 to 12 months, there's no indicator saying it's going to happen, whether it be interest rates or whether it be just availability of equipment, construction costs. I don't believe construction costs specifically are going down anytime soon. I think they're high, and they're high to stay. So I do think there's some contentious people out there who are worried about making investments in any kind of business, but especially one that's what we have. And that's why we look a lot of times for second generation space. We've been very successful over the past 2 years finding second generation space for many franchise partners. Not everybody wants to deal with that because obviously there's a whole other scope of problems. But we've been very fortunate, really, since last year and going into this year. We have found 3 or 4 different locations that are second generation that are saving people a lot of money. Unfortunately, people before them failed. And we have a brand, we have a concept that doesn't fail. I mean, we've had our difficulties, and we've had to close some units over the 30 plus years we've been in business since 1993. But that's a very small number. You can count them on one hand. So we look forward to talking with people who can either finance it or fund most of it themselves, have a good previous banking relationship because of previous business they've been in, or are okay to wait for that second generation space that comes up because they're not growing on trees. They're out there, but every company is looking to scoop them up. That's not a strategy I'm inventing. That's a strategy that's out there and people are doing, from independents to franchise brands. So, but I'm optimistic. I just believe we are where we are right now. And probably through 2025, we'll be there. But I'm hoping that by the end of 25 and into 26, things really change for the better.
What's the profile of the perfect candidate, Daryl? Do they need prior food experience, or is that not a requirement here?
It's not a requirement. I mean, really look for people who have previous business experience of any sort. We look for people who can own and operate. That's really our number one priority. And obviously, we look for people in the markets we want to develop in. We're not opening up in Colorado and Wyoming and California and Washington State. We now stretch out to Texas, to Houston. Texas is a big state, and we have 5 locations in Houston that are all company owned. We did that to prove the point that we can operate out there successfully, and we have over the last few years. But we can grow out that market, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio. I mean, there's plenty of room to grow out there, but that's as far west as we go. We're going to fill in and stay in the South and stay in the Southeast. There's plenty of great markets that we're going into as we open new stores in 2025. But again, the outlook is good, and I would love to have people that have, great business experience and they're committed to the process of being an owner operator. I think that's the biggest challenge in our business, are the ones who are not owner operators. And that's a challenge, but those are really the only requirement. Obviously, they have to be financially qualified. But if they're an owner operator, I've got plenty of owner operators that don't have food service experience, and they're some of my best franchisees because they get it. They understand the business setting. They understand how to hire the right people and train the right people, and they're just enough involved in the business to do some damage and in a good way. So that's really the profile of the person I'd like to have. Someone who's willing to be involved in the business, financially has the capability, and certainly has some previous business experience and management experience. That's the primary franchisee I want.
We're coming around the final turn, Daryl. Before I ask you for contact info, what have I not asked you today that you might wish I did?
Well, I think the biggest thing with me and with us is that the breakfast side of the franchise industry is so big right now. And that's usually what we end up talking about when we talk to prospects over the phone and on Zoom calls, is the breakfast industry. And I think it's here to stay. I think there were some questions about it with some of the other bigger national brands that are still out there today. But we, along with several other brands, have grown the breakfast industry to a little bit more upscale, which hence brings in a little bit higher higher price per ticket and ticket average. And that affords us to get really good real estate and being main and main in the end cap of a big power center or a big development. So those are the things that really I would want people to know is breakfast is here to stay. And the way we're doing it is unique. It's cool. It's fun. And we've got 32 years of doing it. So we've been doing this for a long time, and we're always getting better.
Daryl, what about some contact info for those who want to get back around with you and learn more?
Yeah, our website is flyingbiscuit.com. That's where you can find all franchise information about Flying Biscuit. And my name is Daryl Dollinger. I'm the president of the company. But if you go on our website, flyingbiscuit.com, you can get all the information you need about franchising. And then at some point in the process, you'll be talking to me. I have some people on my team, Andrew and Jack, who handle all the leads and talk to everybody. And then usually I'm the one to close the deal. So you'll definitely end up talking to me in some way through the process.
That's terrific. Daryl, it's been like a treat to get back around and visit with you again. Let's not take so long to do it again. What do you say?
I hear you.
Daryl Dollinger, CEO of the Flying Biscuit. Thrilled to have you here, Daryl, and all the best to you in 2025.
Thanks, Dan. Same to you. Thanks for having me.
Well, that's a wrap for today. Next week, we're joined by another veteran of the restaurant franchise world, when John Ramsey drops by. John heads up franchising for Yadav Enterprises, franchisees of hundreds of franchised restaurants across a multitude of brands, and franchisors of Nick the Greek, with some 60 restaurants operating, 50 of which are franchised, and the 150-unit-strong franchise concept Taco Cabana. John Ramsey, next week, right here on Franchise Today. Until then, I'm Stan Friedman, wishing you the best, the very best of all things franchising, and Franchise Today is out.
Franchise Today is a production of FRM Solutions, providing best-in-class CRM tools to empower relationships with prospective and existing franchisees. Find them online at frmsolutions.com. Join Stan every Wednesday at noon Eastern for another episode of Franchise Today. Or, as always, download episodes on demand at blogtalkradio.com